Attorney Linda Bernard, also Police Commissioner Linda Bernard. You're watching us, listening to us, hopefully enjoying us on any and all social media platforms, including obviously YouTube. I was going to say W. Watching us is not on W. Our network is WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. But you can watch us, listen to us, etc. on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, all of the social media platforms. I urge you to do so because today we have a wonderful guest who is one of the brightest, most informed persons I've ever met, and and I've been all over the world. So when I tell you that is no joke, and that is Mr. James Beasley, who is the president of Two Sigma Research. Hello, James Beasley. How are you?
Hello, how are you doing, Linda? And I appreciate that. And I'd like to slide one quick correction. I'm not the president, but I'm working as a consultant role with the Two Sigma Research Company.
Okay.
And to let you know what Two Sigma Research is Sigma Research is a Detroit-based organization which has been in existence over 20 years. And the number one objective is to find a way to have our children learn at an accelerated rate that closes the achievement gap.
Okay, and so you're an expert in the area of education, and the beauty of it is that as a Detroiter, you are one committed to Detroit. You've been educated in Michigan. You went to Eastern Michigan University. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I was their first African American on the Board of Regents. So it was then Go Hurons. It's not anymore since you can't use Indian names for teams. But you were just telling me that our basketball team is going to be great this year, and we're playing Michigan on November the 11th.
On November 11th, we got the number one transfer player in the portal, Mr. Imani Bates, out of Ypsilanti, Michigan. He's from Ypsilanti, and he's coming back home to play. And he has 5 other teammates who also transferred in as well. As a matter of fact, with the new transfer portal rule in the NCAA, it creates a new form of metric, and they rate the schools after the transfer portal is over. And Eastern Michigan rated number 4 in the nation in the transfer portal.
Wow.
Stan Heath, our coach, is going into his second year, and so we're expecting some outstanding things. Imani Bates, by the way, is the first 5-star basketball player ever to play in the Mid-American Conference.
Wow, that is amazing. I'm going to have to come to that game on November the 11th. You'll have to come with me if you like. I'm a Regent Emeritus, so I get to go to all the good stuff. So you should, we should definitely plan on that.
All right.
But even before we get to that, let's talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, and I know near and dear to yours, and that is education, and actually the abysmal failure of education in educational initiatives among public schools in the city of Detroit. And I would imagine this also transfers to other largely minority cities within the state of Michigan. The last time you were here, you told me that, quote, Detroit is the lowest performing major city in Michigan. Detroit is the lowest performing major city in the United States of America. Detroit is lower in literacy for all subgroups than the state of Mississippi. Detroit student literacy is lower than ELL students. What does that mean? I forgot.
English language learners.
English language learners. For people who are foreigners who came here. Okay. Detroit is invented a new category of low performance, 00 schools. Detroit student literacy is lower than Native American students on remote reservations. 85% of Detroit students do not, I repeat, do not meet the minimum benchmark for college or entrance to trade or technical training. High school graduates in Detroit read at the level of 8th grade compared to some suburban districts. Cost per proficient student exceeds $100,000 per student. Low-performing schools rob Detroit homeowners of billions of dollars in personal wealth. And finally, Detroit's literacy crisis fuels our exploding crime rate. Help me with this and with your data, Mr. Beasley.
All right. I think that when we begin to take a look at data, first thing we have to take a look at is the source. And what we like to look at is the Michigan Department of Education. We like to look at the Michigan Department of Education as a credible source. And so there are a lot of people don't know how data is actually collected. There's various ways of doing it. There are key benchmarks that we look at. MSTEP is the Michigan State Department of Assessment, and it gives you the data on subgroups within the K-12 environment. Then you have a national assessment called NAEP.
How do you spell that?
NAEP.
NAEP.
And NAEP stands for National Assessment of Educational Progress, and
Okay.
it's sometimes referred to as the nation's report card.
Okay.
Okay, and it's given every other year. Last year should have been NAEP year, but because of COVID, it got delayed until this year. So we've taken the NAEP already, and we're awaiting the results. But NAEP has a subgroup inside of it called TUDA, Tuda, and what it does is it ranks the 20 largest metropolitan areas in terms of their performance. In the last 3 NAEP assessment periods, Detroit has positioned themselves 20 out of 20. Now, in all fairness, this current administration hasn't, because we just got the current board back 5 years ago. We really don't have any data. We're awaiting that report card to come in.
Mm-hmm.
But historically, the last 3 assessments, we finished 20 out of 20. And so these are inflection points that we've struggled with for a while, and that's the reason we need to have an approach that can put us on track to reverse the trend.
What disturbs me a great deal, as you know, we just had a congressional election in Detroit for the Democratic candidate, and of course that will be the candidate that goes to Congress.
Mm-hmm.
And I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Holier who spent about $6 million trying to get the seat, and he was unsuccessful.
Mm-hmm.
As an African American man from the city of Detroit, I challenged him, Mr. Beasley, on the point that he was so proud of the fact that the legislature had given $500 million to education, according to him, in the city of Detroit. And I said, we don't need more bricks and mortar. We actually had great bricks and mortar that were real bricks and not fake bricks and not fake mortar, not drywall, but real wall. What we need are teachers and a system that can really teach. I said to him, rather than invest in a new Mumford, which is empty, and a new that big school on the east side. That these schools are for the most part empty because there's less than 50,000 students in the Detroit public school system. I would rather spend give each Detroit student a personal tutor to start it. But he ignored the data that you have. The investment that has to be made is not in bricks and mortar. As I said to you earlier, my dad was from Mississippi, and he was educated in a one-room schoolhouse in Natchez, and had an appreciation for art, literature, culture, reading, writing, music, everything. I mean, it's not this. It's this that makes a difference. What do you think?
Yeah, I think. I think
$500 million to be 20 out of 20.
We need an immediate change. The thing that frustrates me most is gaining access in terms of having people understand what the alternative is, because we have a unique situation right now. In less than 60 days, we have the ability to vote for 4 board members.
Correct.
And that's the majority of the vote. We need to decide what's important to us as a community. And now, I work in a community, and I live in a community. What I'm hearing
Keep going.
What I'm hearing from the community standpoint is that they're frustrated, and they're looking at putting together a slate dedicated to literacy. we need to declare an academic emergency. Illiteracy is killing us as a community. Literacy has to be the number one objective of anyone who sits on that. That's the only thing that matters is how do we teach our kids to learn how to read.
How do you define literacy? How to read?
How to read.
I believe it's I believe it's how to read and how to write. How to write.
Absolutely.
I mean, kids cannot write a paragraph on Mother's Day. That is grammatically correct. English, just commas, periods, spelling, things like that. I agree with you. They can't read, but neither can they write.
When we were
It's embarrassing.
When we were growing up, literacy was defined as the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Correct.
And it's basically the same way.
Okay.
Because if you can master those three, then you can master life.
That's so true. I like that. If you master reading, writing, and arithmetic, you can master life. So you're absolutely right about the election that's coming up. I'm very impressed by a man that is very impressed by you, Dr. John Telford. He is all for literacy, and obviously is literate. Has written books, etc., that are grammatically correct.
Yes.
Not what I sometimes call sort of ghetto books, which are just ignorant. I mean, nothing is properly. Verbs aren't and nouns aren't conjugated. Nothing is done correctly in terms of the book. Is just like ghettoese. But in any event, he is a candidate for this, and he is a literate person.
Very literate.
I vigorously support his campaign, and he has tremendous integrity. As you know, he doesn't accept money. He won't accept any contributions because he doesn't want to be, quote, felt that he's being bought out, or he has owes favors to anyone other than the students of the city of Detroit. He's very much like you, a man of great integrity and principles.
Well, it matters. It matters. And the foundation of that is, where we learned our basic skills. I'm from the old school, as I may have said that my father instilled in myself and my brother Keith, who's a retired Detroit police officer, Keith Beasley, and he's opened up a new event venue in Detroit called Channel One Productions. Which is
Called what?
Channel One Productions.
Okay, where is that located?
It's on 444 Meldrum, Meldrum, off of it's off of Jefferson.
Meldum.
Drum.
Meldrum. Okay.
Yeah.
It's off of what?
Jefferson. It's like Jefferson and St. Albans, right by the
Okay.
Walgreens up there, the next block over.
Okay.
And just a place for the community to have things such as repast, social events.
It's called Channel
One Productions.
One Productions. Oh, that's great. So you can have any sort of private event that you want. That's interesting how the industry has changed. In the old days and everything had to be like at the Rooster Tail or as you say, large white venues, because we didn't have a black venue ever that I can recall. And now they're moving to different venues, and for all kinds of events, everything from baby showers to that are in the community. You don't have to pay a fortune to park, everything.
You're right.
$20 right off the rip before you even walk in. So yeah. So okay, Channel One Production. So ladies and gentlemen, keep that in mind. 444 Meldrum. It's right near Jefferson and St. Albans. If you're not an East Sider, I'm a West Side.
Okay.
You're East Side. So okay.
If you want to get more information, it's on channel1.com.
Okay.
You can go to channel1productions.com.
Okie dokie.
Channel One.
All right.
But getting back to the main topics, values transfer.
Yes.
He was a third grade educated former sharecropper from Mississippi, and when I talk to kids, they don't know what a sharecropper is. I tell them sharecropper is first cousin to a slave.
That's correct.
You did
I
the
like
same
that
work.
word.
You did the same work and basically got the same pay.
You're absolutely right, and had nothing to show for it. I mean, you had no running water, no nothing. I mean, you just were able to exist, barely, quite frankly.
And it was that lifestyle that motivated so many men of his generation to come to Detroit in the Great Migration for
That's
the
true.
promise that Detroit offered in terms of having a living daily wage. And it's funny that we're still fighting for those same battles, but the key to it is having a good education, and that's why we're fighting
Correct.
so hard.
And
right
that
now.
starts with those 3 R's that you're talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on Chop It Up today with attorney Linda Bernard. Also, Police Commissioner Linda Bernard. My guest is the very, very distinguished James Beasley. I mean, that intense look that you see in that gray hair says a lot. But it doesn't begin to compare with what's between his ears. But my father used to teach me all the time, is that nobody can take away from you what's between this ear and that ear. They
Hmm.
can take your clothes, they can take jewelry, they can take your house, they can take anything, but they can't take away your knowledge.
Hmm.
And what you're fighting for in this community is that knowledge. And again, tune in to WJZZ Cool TV on any and all social media platforms: YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and of course, Facebook. Go ahead, Jim. You were going to make a point there about what's happening here in Detroit.
Yeah, and what's happening here in Detroit is that I can look back to my childhood and how I was raised. And my mother has old school mother. She would sit you down, and before I even went to elementary school, you're gonna know your ABCs, you're gonna know your numbers, you're gonna know your address.
We had to sit in my grandmother's lap with the Bible. That's how you learn to read.
That's how I learned the 23rd Psalms at 5 years old.
Uh huh. That's right. Right.
and so once again we see the integration with the church and literacy and the community. And that's a link that's missing now. I tell people I like to joke around. I tell people when I grew up on drugs. Some people are surprised to find out I grew up on drugs. My mother drugged me to Sunday school. She drugged me 11 o'clock service. I went to afternoon service. She drugged me to
Oh Lord.
BTU.
Yeah.
So I was constantly in church, but it was a reinforcer because it taught us to read and it reinforced good principles.
Not only that, you were listening to people who were literate, who
Yes,
spoke correct English.
yes.
So you learned correct English. And of course, people aren't in churches anymore. We have these monster institutions, but they're not ever filled. I don't believe at all, at least not in the Detroit area. I don't know about in the suburban areas and so forth. But okay, the Detroit public schools. How many kids do we have now in school? How many did we lose through the as a result of COVID?
Well, I think I was at the board meeting this last Tuesday. I think we're looking at about 53,000 somewhere around those numbers, and I think
It really is 53,000? Because I
well
thought it
that
was
well
less than
well, well
50,000.
that was reported, and then it was also an addendum added that said that typically after the initial reporting numbers they expect to lose maybe another 3,000. So that will give you a kind of range that you should possibly thinking of.
Is there anything that the Detroit public school system gets right now? Since they can't get their numbers right, they can't get their students right, and I was terribly, and I remain vigorously opposed to the closing of the schools. And I tell people, Jim, for COVID or anything else, first of all, during the Spanish flu, nothing
Hmm.
closed, as you know,
Hmm.
and that was far more devastating to America. We only had 103 million people, and like 800,000 died. So that was much worse than COVID could ever be or has been. But as I tell people, if a Kroger bagger, a person who puts my milk in a bag, is an essential worker, how can a teacher not be an essential worker? It was devastating to me that we closed our schools, and everybody I know with money immediately put their kids in Catholic school and private school. I mean, they're not going to let their kids sit out of school
Hmm.
for 2 years,
Hmm.
and that's what happened in our community because we bent to the will of the teachers union, which made no sense. How you get your full salary, full benefits, full pension, full everything, and not be doing your job. And you can't teach kindergarten or most other things online to younger people. You might be able to teach it at a college level or senior high school level, but clearly not before that.
Well, you actually can get some of that done if you take the right approach, the right distance learning approach. And unfortunately, that's one of the major prices that we pay because part of what the Two Sigma research group had found out was that there's a way of implementing effective distance learning. And their efforts had been adopted by the school board back in as far as 2010, when Robert Bob was
Mm-hmm.
superintendent. We had unanimous board support, and they actually implemented the program at Sherrill Elementary School. And the promise was that if you got successful results, they would replicate it. But the results were so over the top positive.
Really?
We've documented it through the Michigan Department of Education as having a 10 standard deviation 1 year jump, and the school was subsequently closed down. And
Sure. What else is new?
you know,
If it's working, it's gotta go. It can't. It can't be permanent.
so it raises the question whether this poor performance on behalf of the system is a bug or a feature.
Meaning,
Meaning that coming from the system standpoint, computer standpoint, if a system has a bug, you fix the bug.
correct.
If it's a feature, you live with it because it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you got to make that distinction. And if it's a bug, then we should be doing the things to fix it, and we should be looking at everything possible until it's fixed. But how can you rule out ideas that you haven't ruled in? I like to say that I grew up in an innovation type environment. I was fortunate when I was in high school. I worked for IBM when I was in high school.
Oh wow.
So I know what a co-op program looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I was in junior achievement when I was in high
Me
school.
too. I was in junior
All
achievement.
3 years, Mr. Executive at the New Center.
They don't even have junior achievement anymore.
Not like they used to. I mean, it was a wonderful
It
program.
was everywhere in Detroit at one time.
Yeah, so when I went up to Eastern Michigan, I knew I was going to major in business and had 3 years worth of background in it, which gave me a foundation. You know, and so when you look at all of these things, and you see that when I came out and then worked for IBM when I came out of college, and subsequently worked for IBM, Hewlett Packard, Xerox, Sun Microsystems, Blackboard, Building Educated Leaders for Life, which is working at closing the education achievement gap. And actually spent time as a doing literacy consulting for Max Scholar and helping bring that foundation here to the city, which the city is now expanding on. So there's a lot of questions which are being raised, but we have right now. I think our attention shifts off to the superintendent because we didn't bring the superintendent up here. What we did is we voted for board members,
Correct.
and they brought him up here.
That's correct.
And so
They do the review and they went through the resumes and they're the ones who made the determination who was going to be the superintendent,
and they were the ones who decided to extend his contract.
which was ridiculous.
Well, my question is, what was the rubrics? What as a board member, you should be able to justify your position. One of the most challenging points I ever had came from one of the most racist managers I had to work with in one company, and he came at me one time and he says, "Be able to defend your position."
Right.
And so, if you're in a position of responsibility, you ought to be able to defend your position. That's what we pay you to do.
Correct.
And so we need to ask questions of those who are empowered with making policy why this doesn't exist. Even if you look at what the opportunity is, and in business we like to talk about opportunity cost. And what opportunity cost is the cost of the decision that you didn't make.
Correct.
The cost of the decision that you didn't make.
Right. That is so appropriate. So the kids in the Detroit public schools, let me tell you where I see an intersection, if you will, between what's not happening in the Detroit public schools and law enforcement as a police commissioner. Mm-hmm. As you know, recently in the city of Detroit, we've had 3 very high-profile incidents involving people that none of whom were even 20 years old, 18, 19 years old. The first involved a young man who decided to stand in an upper window and shoot at a police car and killed Officer Courts for no reason, just blind stuff. Okay. That was 19, a kid, good-looking boy, too. Nothing wrong with him, walked out, he had on a wife beater shirt, in shape, and nothing wrong with him, ponytail, the whole shebang. Second guy here a few weeks ago who killed 4 people in the city of Detroit just randomly. 19 years old. Kid. I don't even know if he even finished high school. Neither of these kids. Both of these are kids. They may be 19, but they're like children. You know what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. They're clearly not men. Mm-hmm. They're just 19. Mm-hmm. So, and then the third one, just a week or so ago, the 15-year-old who was driving, who decided he was going to try to run over a police officer and tried to run him walking at a gas station into the pump, then pulled off and left. And our policy in Detroit, Jim, is if a person is fleeing in a vehicle, we do not fire at him or her because you can hit the person in the head, they would lose control of the car, and that could kill an innocent person, me or you walking down the street. So we had to let him go at that point. Then we got him later, of course. But these are people who don't even have, um, I mean, many boys and so forth still are wet in the bed when they're 10, 11 years old. They haven't even been big people or even young adults for 11 years. I mean, yet they're so incredibly violent. And actually I trace this back, at least in part, to the fact that in to the fact that what are we doing in schools? Why aren't they educated? Why aren't their minds occupied with things other than murder, mayhem, killing? I mean, everybody knows that you don't try to run over the police or shoot at the police. I
That's
mean,
just common sense.
every country in the world. So, I mean, what is happening to youth in the city of Detroit? In the school system, don't they have any interest, or
Well,
what is being taught? I mean, I'm just trying to figure it out.
unfortunately, so much of this begins at home. You talked about it. I talked about it. Our basic foundational training started at home,
Well, I agree with that part.
and then we build upon it. We build upon it. What is well, and also when we were coming up, if you look at
But even poor kids, even kids that didn't have a good home, when they got to school, they were learning something. You know, they learned principles, they learned values. They had teachers that would stand up. You know what I mean? And get over there and do this and do that. And and act like you have some sense. I
yeah,
remember those
you're
words
right,
very well
you're right.
because I went to Catholic school. I mean,
Okay.
they didn't play
Well,
that because they had corporal punishment. They didn't play.
well, we had it in public schools too.
Yeah,
Don't,
yeah,
don't
that
get it
ruler,
twisted.
that ruler. You know.
With paddle.
Uh huh.
Same thing. Yeah. So
So
it comes down to as society changes, then we relax the norms. When we were at school, you had something to respect. You respected the teachers because there was a fear of retribution and punishment. Now I don't think the teachers get the same level of respect now that our parents gave them. The worst thing I could do was come home and have a report waiting on me from my teacher. And then my mother, I could hear her right now. She would question me. You say, yeah, so and so said this. No, mom, she didn't say that. Oh, now you're calling her a liar. Now I've got two sets of things to answer to. One is for my behavior, and then the other one is for me, questioning the
the
teacher's
teacher.
word. And that was a level of backup that the teachers had, so they felt comfortable reinforcing. I don't think we give that to them. You have
Well,
a
I
different
agree with that
environment.
part. But even without that, I mean, part of what I think should be happening in schools is giving kids, not just activities but direction and I mean and so forth. And I don't even think we have. I don't know if we have band. I don't know. I mean, I know we have athletics in some programs. I don't know. I don't understand what's the curriculum like today in schools.
Well,
It doesn't seem to be much of nothing.
to Dr. Vidi's credit, that's one of the things he has helped, expand under his duration. I know our school. I graduated from Northwestern High School. They've restored the band program and some of the other extracurricular things are coming in line, and that's all well, but there are other opportunities that we have to deal with, and I think that we need to be cognizant of the fact that we had. When I say we, I mean Detroit Public School has been under operation of emergency management up until 5 years ago. And so 5 years ago, we just hand the control, hand the reins, hand the wheel over to a new board without any instructions, without any remediation for the ill and the wrongs and damage which had been done to the school system under emergency management. You know,
Well, the city of Detroit had emergency management too, but I mean, the city hasn't gone to hell in a handbasket, at least in many
ask
respects.
retirees where their pension money is at now.
I'm sorry.
Ask retirees where their pension money was
I
at.
understand that
You
part,
know, And
I'm talking about the people that are in the city. The city didn't go down. The retirees, that's a subset of employees. I got that part.
yeah,
I understand
but
that, and that's
damage was
important.
done. Damage was done.
Yeah, damage was done in that sense of the word. But overallly, I mean, the city didn't go into the toilet as a result of emergency management. But it appears that the public school system has, based on what you're saying.
Well,
Since then,
it was
5 years,
yeah.
you said.
It's just a continuation of the poor performance under emergency management. That's what I meant in
But
terms
we
of
had poor
remediation.
performance. The city had poor performance under emergency management.
But we didn't we
That's
had
why they came in the first place. Biggest bankruptcy in the country.
yeah, yeah. So that's my point. We had an opportunity in the beginning to take a fresh approach as to how we're going to tackle these problems. And when I say we, I mean this time I'm speaking in terms of the Two Sigma Research Group, had approached the administration with a plan that took advantage of the Every Student Succeeds Act. And that's what we want to really focus in on is if you look at the opportunities that exist. A lot of people understand No Child Left Behind because that was
Yeah, that was a good buzzword. Bush used it all
yeah,
the
Bush
time.
used it. Well, a lot of other people don't know that that was replaced by the Every Child Succeeds Act.
Every child what?
Succeeds Act.
Oh, Every Child Succeeds Act. Okay, ESSA.
Yep,
Okay.
ESSA, the Every Child Succeeds Act.
And what's that act?
Well, it gives us new provisions that we can implement to solve long standing problem. One of the provisions that it provides is it provides for public-private partnerships. And under public-private partnerships, that means the private entities can team up with public organizations and work towards solving a problem that has not been able to be solved yet. And that problem right now is closing the achievement gap. And so another thing that it provides is a new model of funding called Pay for Success.
Oh, I love that.
Pay for Success.
Tell me what that's about.
Pay for Success really reverses our current funding models, which says you can enter into contracts or covenant agreements with organizations which says that their payment is dependent upon their delivery.
Correct.
And so I contrast that with our current entrenched model of what I like to call a pay for failure model.
Correct.
Because now we enter into contracts, we pay organizations to perform, and we get what we get.
Right.
But if we don't get our results, they've already got our money.
Correct.
You've got no embedded insurance. It also, another major piece that it calls for is it calls for research and evidence-based solution implementation, which means we shouldn't be, buying curriculum because a vendor has a pretty brochure.
Not only a pretty brochure gives great parties for the board.
Big shrimp parties.
Or invites them to conferences and and they pay for the conference.
Listen, I understand that because I used to be chairman of the cable commission. So
Okay.
I sat on the other side of the table.
Right.
And so I know how business is transacted. So
Right.
that's
That's how
it's
those booksellers and computer sellers and stuff make a fortune. That's exactly they want customers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this Every Student Succeeds Act is a nationally mandated act. And so every state is required to submit their version of the Every Student Succeeds Act. Michigan has on file its copy of the Every Student Succeeds Act.
Okay, so what did Michigan say?
And within the Every Student Succeeds Act for Michigan, they set targeted goals. And their targeted goal for Michigan, which is the same targeted goal for the national plan,
Okay.
is to achieve a 90% proficiency rate
In what?
reading.
Okay, 90% reading proficiency.
90% reading, math proficiency. But that's the goal.
The 3 R's.
Reading,
Writing, and arithmetic.
Yep, that's the goal.
Oh, wow.
90%. Now, keep in mind now, our third graders are reading at 9%. Don't get angry. These are not my numbers. These are the numbers that the current administration and system is producing for us. So we
Wait a minute, let me understand. Let me repeat what you said. You're saying that the kids in what grades now?
third grade,
Third
third
grade
grade reading proficiency
is at 9%.
9%.
So they are totally illiterate.
Well, I'm not saying totally because
But
totally would be
almost.
100%. I'm saying that out of 100 kids, only 9 out of 100 are showing that they can read proficient or advanced. That's what 9% means.
Wow.
Out of 100 kids, only 9 of them are
So
showing.
91% are in the dust, so to speak.
They're in jeopardy. We have them in academic jeopardy because we don't have them on track. And that's at the third grade. And so if you do the projections and look at the trajectory in the future, you can see how you can get behind and you stay behind. Now, let me tell you how that manifests itself and it relates to college debt. When we graduate kids who don't have the prerequisite skill to compete in college,
Right.
and they get to college,
Right.
now you're taking remedial courses in college to supplement for what you should have learned in high school.
Right.
You're paying college credits for stuff that you should have got for free in high school.
Right.
And now
And
you're
you're
in
paying
college,
for it.
and you're not getting any college credit towards your degree.
Right. Not only that, if you have loans and stuff like that, you're subsidizing in college because of your deficiencies, what you should have learned while you were in high school.
That's the point. That's
Wow.
the point. That's how, so when you look
Wow.
at college loan debt, it's all tied in together.
Yeah, yeah, it's
This
all
is
part of the hustle.
This is an integrated problem.
It's a hustle.
So we can't pick it off, piece by piece, because there's no silver bullet, but there is an if you look at it from a system standpoint, and you integrate all the subparts, then you can manage to a specific objective, and if you're going to have a plan has to be specific in terms of targeted goals, because if you don't have the goals targeted, how do you know whether or not you're succeeding or failing?
You don't know. You don't know. You're just going along to get along, and you're still getting paid to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is the bad part.
Yeah, management is the key. At Eastern Michigan University, they taught us management has 5 functions: planning, organizing, implementing, developing, and controlling.
Implement. What was after implement?
Developing
Develop.
and
Okay.
controlling.
And controlling.
But if you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
No, you can't. That's absolutely true.
Now, one other key thing I think that where we made with this board, because of their lack of knowledge.
Oh, totally lack of knowledge.
because
It's
they're
just a popularity
The lack
contest.
of knowledge in this area of assessment is prior to the current administration, their leadership taking over. Detroit had an affiliation with a group called NWEA, which stands for Northwest Education Associates. And
NW
EA,
Educational
Associates.
Okay, gotcha.
NWEA is an assessment group, probably the gold standard in America for
Oh, really?
assessing students' progress. We had been affiliated with Detroit Public Schools, had been affiliated with them in decades, going back. And so what that does is that gives you assessment data. So even during the year, you can test the kids, where they're at, whether or not they're on target, off target, and then you make the necessary changes.
So wait a minute, just for my information for our audience as well. When do you start assessing kids?
Mm-hmm.
What grade level do you start the assessment? In your opinion, or when should they be assessed? Just based on your experience.
I'm from my experiences, you need to have some type of baseline, as early as you can to really find out, what their knowledge level is, because
Right.
you have to start to touch them and teach them where they're at.
I agree.
So
That's
the
why I
first
like
step, the first step to problem resolution is problem identification. Even if you look at where the Detroit Public Schools is at right now with their current system, because they he bought a few years back a system called iReady, and it was a system that Dr. Beasley brought up from
Of course, Florida.
from Florida with them, and they're in an assessment phase right now for this school year, because they want to find out where the students are at. Then after their assessments in relationship to iReady, then they're going to place them where they feel is appropriate. So that's a good first start, to the school year, because it's absolutely necessary. So we've got areas we You know, we
Should there be an assessment before the third grade? I think there should.
yeah, earlier the better. I mean, because if you're gonna have a problem, the best time to diagnose a problem is early.
Early on.
You know, and I get that just from dealing with computers all the time. Because if we are truly gonna fix a problem, we have to do what we call root cause diagnosis. And root cause is getting down to the very genesis of why the problem occurred. You know, as a matter of fact, I like the way the Orientals put it in one of their old sayings. They said, "Don't look at where you failed, look at where you slipped."
I like that. Who said that?
It was an old Oriental phrase. Don't look at where you failed,
Look at where you slipped.
Most
I
people,
remember that.
most people will curse the ground they landed on,
Right,
and not realize the slip is what precipitated the fall.
right. You're absolutely right. Look at where you slipped. I like that very much. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Chop It Up with attorney Linda Bernard, also Police Commissioner Linda Bernard. My guest is the one of the most distinguished academicians I know, and that is Mr. Beasley. He represents, I always get it confused, Two Sigma, which is a private company that focuses on academic excellence and analysis.
Yes.
They address the real data. It's not the, warm and fuzzy stuff. It's the stuff that reflects what kids really can do, what they're capable of, and what they're doing, and where the system is failing them, or obviously doing a great job. When we talk about Detroit students are a microcosm of black students throughout the state of Michigan. For the most part, our students in Detroit are black. And so he takes this to heart about what's going on with kids here in Detroit, because we don't want Detroit students to do what Reverend Jesse Jackson says and just be the population of the all-black male academy, which is Jackson Prison. And there's a direct correlation between lack of education and incarceration. So your ability to assemble data and address these issues systemically helps all of society. It helps the criminal justice system, helps housing, helps jobs, helps all the things that plague America.
Yes, thank you. And you're right, because this is an integrated problem. Failure in one area will affect us in another area. Correct. And that's most important in terms of us staying on target and being on target. One of the key things we need to understand is, as we look at who we're going to send back and put on the board seats.
I was going to come back to the board, right?
We have to talk about the power of effective board policy.
Okay.
Because oftentimes people will tell you what they can't do. And that's the frustrating part for me, is when people are running for office, everybody tell you what they're going to do. And then you call them up once they get elected, and they tell you what they can't do. Well, I don't have enough help here. I don't have enough support.
But not only that, I look at their history. I mean, I don't understand. What do you think would be the appropriate criteria for a board member for any school system? Bloomfield Hills, Detroit, anywhere.
The first thing, you need to have a passion to put in the work to get a job done. Because
what do you mean passing?
A passion.
Passion.
You need a passion and a dedication. I talked to some current board members, and some of them will complain about the amount of work that's associated with it. Well, when I was on the cable commission, I knew nothing about cable law. Mm-hmm. You know how much work I had to do to bring myself up to speed, just to be conversant?
It's a lot of work.
Because the last thing I wanted to be was a person that I didn't know, when a newscaster would put a microphone in my face and ask me a question about something I should have known the answer for, and I didn't want to look stupid. So you study. That's why you asked to be in those positions. You have to do the same thing as it relates to criminal law. If you're serving on that police board, you need to know the rules, the practices, and the policies. So
you have to educate yourself and obviously participate. Passion and dedication. And obviously, in your opinion, currently, they don't have that, obviously. But I think more than that.
At different levels. I'm not going to make a blanket statement like that.
And dedication. I also think it takes integrity.
integrity is key. Integrity is knowing the difference between right and wrong, and having intestinal fortitude to make the right decisions when you're called to do it.
And to hold people accountable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not okay for me to get to be 20th. And the question is, if you're the administrator, where are the policies that you're going to bring to the board, and the programs that will eliminate that statistic?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be last. I tell everybody, for everybody that I know, in terms of everything that I do. For me, there's only one number in the numerical alphabet. And that's number one.
That's
I
right.
don't want to be in the top 10 schools. I don't want to be in the top 5, and I don't want to be first runner up. I want to be number one. And everything that we do has to be dedicated towards that goal. I mean, everything else is just unacceptable.
I agree. When I worked at IBM, my branch manager, he had a phrase, and it got ingrained in us. It was simple. It said, "Work hard, play hard, be number one."
Oh, I agree. I agree.
You know, anytime a person tells you he's number two, all he's telling you is that he's a first place loser.
I like that. A first place loser. And we're number 20.
We
So
ought to
we're-
be tired of being last on the list and mean the most.
Right. I agree with you. I mean, I don't understand it. And so what's the answer? What's the solution?
The
To this
answer,
dilemma
the
that
answer
we
is for
have.
us to embrace innovation. Not be afraid to make change, not be afraid to do something different. Dr. Frederick George Sampson, who was the late great theologian from Detroit and one of my mentors and pastor, he would say that the last words of a dying organization is that we've always done it that way.
Right.
And we are operating in an environment which demands change, but we also operate in an environment which is so static in the ways that it's done, it can't even embrace it. I was listening to some of the tributes to Queen Elizabeth on her passing, and they were asking her about change and how would the monarchy embrace change and establish institutions. And her response was that established institutions that don't evolve with change will not become the beacon they need to be in order to lead and be trusted by the children of the future. And that's where we're at now. What does innovation look like? Innovation looks like something you haven't seen before. And
Absolutely.
if it looks like something you haven't seen before, why are you going to take rules that you currently have, like the purchasing rules inside Detroit Public Schools, which are not flexible enough to even account in a Every Student Succeeds Act kind of program? Because
I apologize. This has never happened. I turned it off. You saw me do it when I started this. I don't understand this. I don't know. I turned it off. There it is. It's all the way. The thing is all the way down. But anyway, I don't know. My phone has been malfunctioning, so I should have left it out in the hallway. I apologize for interrupting what we're saying.
Yeah, but that's where we're at. Dr. Sampson would always say, he says, it's all right to be ignorant because ignorance means you just don't know. We're all ignorant to something.
That's correct.
He says it's all right to be ignorant. It's just stupid to stay that way.
That's correct.
You know.
That is absolutely true. So in terms of our board, how many people are on the Board of Education?
Right now we have 7 members on the Board of Education.
Only 7?
Yes, 7 members on the Board of Education. The majority of them are up for re-election. We have 4 open seats.
4 open seats.
We have 4 open seats.
Do you have a seat? Do you have a slate for those seats that you view as quote innovative? Since you're the expert in this area and I'm not.
Well, I don't. I'm going to support the literacy slate. Helen Moore and her group, they're vetting candidates out on the literacy slate, and the literacy slate is focused on making that the number one issue for this school year. Is to get a board who will attack this number one problem, and help turn it around and look at any measures that make sense,
Is there? I mean, even with the literacy slate and so forth, aren't there core competencies that you think board members should have? I mean, with respect to finance, organizations.
It would be helpful, but keep in mind you have finance people on this one. on this board. One of the board members is a community, a developer of the community, so she understands. So it's not just understanding the blocks, the X and O's and the blocking techniques in terms of making something happen. It's having a vision. And even the scriptures would tell us that my people perish for a lack of a vision. And so we need leadership that has a vision that our children can achieve at a very high rate. So one of the things, that we wanted to suggest that you take a look at is innovation will provide us new tools. It'll provide us new approaches, and it should generate better results. So you can set a policy, for example, by putting that pay for success model in place. Well, what would that look like? Well, one of the things that the Two Sigma Research Group wanted to stand by is we would say that, say if we were given an opportunity to implement the program, first of all, in 100 days, we're going to give you feedback on the progress.
Yeah, on the big test.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
definitely-
Well, yeah. We're going to show you how the children are progressing after 100 days. We'll measure you before they begin the program. As you said, begin early, measure them, where you're at. We're going to give you 100 days of academic treatment. And then after 100 days of treatment, we're going to use NWA exam again, measure them again, see how much they learn.
I like that.
And
Yeah.
then makes adjustments. That's how you manage, but we can't even use NWEA because one of the first things this administration did when they came to town was eliminated that as a form of assessment. It's the kind of thing where
Because they didn't want to be assessed.
I didn't say that. I just
That's
said
a
what
fact.
I just said what they did. They
That's right.
eliminated it,
Right. They
And
eliminated the
the reason
evaluation
why-
so they could keep going along to get along.
6 years later, you got our numbers are out of 100 students, 9 are in the third grade. Out of 100 students, 9 are proficient. Those are the numbers.
That's
Those-
totally
Not my
unacceptable.
numbers. That's what we're currently producing.
How much money does the superintendent make?
I think
What's
his-
the salary?
his base
He just
salary,
got a new
I
contract.
think his base salary was like $322,000.
But his package is what, about $500,000-600,000? Because you get so many perks with it.
Yep. I know
driver,
he makes more
security.
than the mayor. He makes more
yeah.
than the governor. He makes so that's how much we value. We value teaching our kids. And so my mother used to always say something that meant a whole lot. It would say, "Fear is change. It's never been robbery."
Yeah.
So we have to establish what's the basis, for our investment. And I'd say that we need to, first of all, agree what do we want to have. And if we want to have a proficient student, then as a board, we should put the metrics in place to measure how much is it costed us to produce a proficient student. And then can we put incentives in place? So, for example, what if you had a plan in place like Two Sigma suggested in the Pay for Success model, that we're going to guarantee you a minimum growth of 1/4 of a standard deviation,
Okay.
which is what a good school district would achieve. And once we hit that per scholar, then that's the trigger point for you paying out of your funds for the system. Now you're paying for something, and you're getting something for what you pay for.
Correct.
As opposed to you paying, like we're doing now, paying something
Right.
and getting 9 out of 100 performance.
Right. That's
I-
totally unacceptable.
Those are the numbers I like to. You got to put it in context for people to understand it clearly.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, because there should be a guaranteed minimum growth, like you said, among the students. But to do that, initially you have to do an in-depth assessment, I think, of each student. Would you agree?
That's absolutely where it begins. At.
And how long, in your opinion, does that assessment take? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, the assessment can be done in a matter of days if you're using something like the NWEA assessment. You sit down and you expose them to it. But then you use our knowledge, and the knowledge of the talented teachers that we have, with our system and based upon the students' needs. And we have to make sure we give them the resources. And that's what the key thing is in here. And people doesn't understand what social impact bonding is about. It's where people say, okay, we believe in you. We're going to give you, we know you've had, you haven't been able to get the proper resources you need on the front end. So we're going to give you everything you need up front. So we can level the playing field before the game begins. And now we can give teachers in Detroit the same advantage that their suburban counterparts have as far as that's concerned. Now, there's still other societal issues that they have to deal with, But that's even more important for us to level the playing field inside the classroom.
But see, I've always thought. I mean, for years, at least 30 years, I've always thought that. And I think I've mentioned this to you before. I've always thought we needed a public boarding schools in Detroit. The and I say that because my friends and so forth in London and so forth, their kids that are successful people. They're both lawyers. They're both busy all week and everything. On Sunday at 5 o'clock, those kids get on the train with their uniform on, and they go to the school. You know, and they're picked up and they're in school from Monday until Friday. Friday at 4 o'clock, they get back on the train. They come back home. But during that 5 days that they're at school, they go to bed at the same time. They get up at the same time. They have the same rules and regulations. They eat at the same time. They have recreation at the same time. There is structure.
Structure.
Kids benefit from structure, and even super rich people recognize it, because that's why kings and queens send their kids to private boarding schools. It makes sense, and to me, that's what we're missing in Detroit. We've needed boarding schools for the last 30, 40 years because families are dysfunctional. But I want to thank you again, Mr. Beasley, for joining us today on Chop It Up with attorney Linda Bernard. As usual, I never have taken 10 pages of notes with a guest in my life, but you're so informed and so smart and so brilliant that I feel compelled to memorialize what you say, not just through this taping. So I just want to thank you for joining us. Keep up the fight. You can count on me to join it. We've got to address the board situation. There are 4 people, I think, whose seats are up. I am
18 candidates.
Yeah, I am supporting Dr. John Telford, and of course,
He's a good man.
Miss Helen Moore's literacy list.
Yes.
Thank you again
Good
for
choices.
joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My honor.